The night settled slowly, like it was unsure whether it wanted to stay. A pale amber glow filtered through the living room curtains, softened by dust in the air and the quiet hum of the city outside. The clock on the wall ticked with a patience that felt intentional, each second stretching just long enough to be noticed. Elena sat curled on the couch, her feet tucked beneath her, fingers wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. Across the room, Noah stood near the window. He hadn't said anything yet. That was what made the silence feel different. For years, silence between them had been comfortable, shared, even intimate. It usually carried the weight of understanding, of two people who didn't need words to exist together. But tonight, it pressed inward. It waited. Noah's reflection hovered faintly in the glass, his shoulders tense, his hands resting against the window frame as if he needed something solid to hold him upright. He looked older in moments like this, not in years, but in depth. Like a man standing at the edge of something invisible. Elena watched him without meaning to. The familiar lines of his back, the subtle rise and fall of his breathing. She knew his body the way one knows a well-worn path, yet something about him felt distant, almost unreachable. "You're quiet," she said softly, her voice careful not to disturb whatever was forming in the room. Noah didn't turn right away. When he finally did, his eyes met hers with hesitation, like he was searching her face for permission he hadn't yet asked for. "I was trying to decide," he said slowly, "if this is the kind of night that changes things." The words landed gently but stayed. Elena's fingers tightened around the mug. "Changes things how?" He exhaled, a breath that sounded heavier than it should have been. He crossed the room and sat beside her, close enough that his knee brushed hers. The contact was accidental, but neither of them moved away. That was the first shift. "I have a wish," Noah said. The word felt strange between them. Not playful, not light. It carried weight, like it had been waiting a long time to be spoken aloud. Elena turned toward him, her expression open but alert. "A wish." He nodded once. "I've had it for a while." "How long?" she asked. He hesitated. "Long enough to be afraid of it." That made her chest tighten. Noah reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. He didn't hand it to her right away. He just held it in his palm, staring at it like it might disappear if he looked away. It was a thin silver ring. Unbroken. Smooth. Plain. Elena had never seen it before. "This," he said quietly, "is my secret circle." Her brow furrowed. "Your, what?" "A circle," he repeated, his thumb tracing its edge. "It doesn't begin or end. It's a space. A promise. Somewhere between two people where nothing is hidden." He finally placed it between them on the couch. The ring caught the light and reflected it softly onto their hands. "I don't want secrets anymore," Noah continued. "Not the quiet ones. Not the ones we convince ourselves don't matter." Elena felt a slow pull in her chest, like something unseen was tightening. "Are you saying I've kept something from you?" "No," he said quickly. "I'm saying we both have." The silence returned, heavier now, shaped by the circle resting between them. She stared at the ring, her thoughts drifting. Marriage had taught her many things, how love could be steady, how routine could feel like safety. But it had also taught her how easy it was to hide small truths inside comfort. "What's the wish?" she asked. Noah swallowed. "That we step into it. Together. No defenses. No masks. Just honesty. Even when it scares us." Her heartbeat grew louder in her ears. "And if what we find changes us?" she asked. He looked at her then, really looked, like he was memorizing her face for a future that might not look the same. "Then at least it will be real." The word echoed. Elena reached for the ring without realizing she'd decided to. Her fingers brushed the cool metal, sending a quiet shiver through her. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried everything they hadn't said in years. She closed her hand around it. Noah's breath caught. "I said yes," she whispered. Not confidently, not bravely, but honestly. Something shifted between them, subtle, invisible, irreversible. The circle was no longer just his. It was theirs. And neither of them knew what stepping fully inside it would demand. The ring rested between them like a quiet witness. Neither Elena nor Noah reached for it again. They didn't need to. Its presence had already altered the air, bending it inward, making every breath feel deliberate. Outside, a car passed, tires hissing against the damp road, then disappeared, leaving the room suspended in a hush that felt carefully held. Elena became aware of her own breathing, of the way her chest rose too quickly, like her body had begun reacting before her mind could catch up. She kept her gaze on the circle, afraid that if she looked at Noah too long, something inside her would open too fast. "This doesn't mean everything changes all at once," she said finally, more to steady herself than to reassure him. Noah nodded, but his eyes remained intent. I know. Slow doesn't scare me. Silence doesn't either. A pause. It's what lives inside the silence that does. That landed somewhere tender. Elena shifted slightly, her shoulder brushing his arm this time, unavoidable, unmistakable. The contact sent a faint tremor through her, surprising in its intensity. They had touched 1,000 times before. But this felt newly charged, like touch had acquired meaning it hadn't carried an hour ago. Noah noticed. He always noticed. He didn't move away. Instead, he let the space close. I think the circle, he said quietly, only works if we let it change how we listen. She turned to him then. What do you mean? Listening without preparing an answer, he replied. Without defending. Just letting the truth arrive. Elena studied his face, the tension at his jaw, the careful restraint in his posture. He looked like someone standing barefoot at the edge of cold water, braced for impact but unwilling to retreat. Something in her softened. Okay, she said. Then you go first. Noah exhaled, slow and deliberate. He reached for the ring, rolling it between his fingers as if grounding himself. I'm afraid, he began. The admission was simple, but it opened a door. I'm afraid that comfort made me quiet, he continued. That loving you deeply somehow taught me how to swallow parts of myself instead of sharing them. Elena felt a tightening behind her ribs. You've never been quiet with me, she said. He shook his head gently. Not outwardly, but inside. There are things I've rehearsed saying to you for years. Moments I wanted to pause time just to feel more deeply, but I didn't know how to ask for that without sounding ungrateful for what we already had. The ring slipped from his fingers and clinked softly against the coffee table. The sound felt final. Elena leaned forward, elbows on her knees, her hands clasped together. I didn't know you felt that way. That's the point, Noah said. I didn't let you. Silence folded around them again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was full of unspoken memories, of moments replayed differently now. Elena thought of late nights spent side by side, scrolling through phones instead of each other. Of mornings that passed in routine gestures instead of lingering glances. None of it had felt wrong at the time. Just safe. I thought, she admitted slowly, that wanting more meant I was ungrateful. Noah looked up at her, eyes searching. More what? She hesitated. The circle seemed to pulse between them, urging honesty. More presence, she said. More moments where we don't rush past what we're feeling. Her voice wavered. More of you noticing me the way you are right now. His gaze softened, deepened. I do notice you, he said. I know, she replied. But noticing isn't the same as staying. The words surprised them both. Noah leaned closer, forearms resting on his thighs now, mirroring her posture. Their faces were nearer than before, close enough that Elena could see the tiny crease between his brows, the familiar mark that appeared when he was thinking too hard. Is this what the circle does? He asked quietly. Makes us say things we've been circling for years. Elena let out a small, breathless laugh. Apparently, their knees touched. Neither of them pulled away. The contact lingered, delicate and electric. Elena felt her awareness narrow to the space between them, to the quiet hum beneath her skin. It wasn't desire in a simple sense, it was recognition. The sense of being seen again, fully, after a long time of partial glances. Noah reached out, hesitated, then rested his hand palm up on the couch between them, an invitation rather than a demand. Elena stared at it for a long moment. Then she placed her hand in his. The connection was immediate, warm, steady, too meaningful for such a small gesture. Noah's thumb brushed lightly over her knuckles, once, unconsciously. The movement sent a slow wave through her chest, settling somewhere deep and unfamiliar. This scares me, she whispered. Me too, he admitted. But I think it's the kind of fear that means we're close to something honest. Their joined hands rested beside the ring now, forming a quiet triangle of meaning. The circle, the connection, the unspoken. Elena realized, with a sudden clarity, that agreeing to his wish hadn't just opened a conversation, it had awakened a part of her she'd carefully kept quiet. A part that wanted depth even when it unsettled the ground beneath her. Noah leaned in slightly, their foreheads almost touching. Not quite. The distance remained, a deliberate hesitation that held more tension than closeness ever could. There's something else, he murmured. Something I haven't said yet. Her breath caught. She nodded once, unable to trust her voice. Outside, the city continued on, unaware that inside this small room, two lives were inching toward a truth that could reshape everything. And the circle waited. The words "there's something else" lingered between them, fragile and heavy at the same time. Elena didn't rush him. She had learned, in this new emotional space, that pauses mattered more than answers. Silence was no longer an absence, it was a doorway. She stayed still, her hand still resting in his, feeling the steady rhythm of his pulse against her skin. It grounded her, even as her thoughts began to drift somewhere uncharted. Noah closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, something had shifted. Not dramatically, no sudden courage, no grand resolve, but a quiet surrender, like he'd stopped fighting the truth and decided to let it speak in its own time. I'm afraid, he said again, softer now, that if I say this out loud, it won't fit back inside me. Elena's throat tightened. Then don't force it, she whispered. Let it come the way it wants to. He gave her a faint smile, grateful, almost reverent. The room felt smaller somehow, like the walls had leaned in to listen. The amber light deepened, casting slow shadows across the floor, over the coffee table, over the silver circle that lay between their hands like a quiet vow. I realized something, Noah began. About the way I love you. Elena held her breath. I love you deeply, he said, firmly, as if anchoring himself. But somewhere along the way, I stopped letting myself feel that love out loud. I packed it away into responsibility. Into routine. Into being steady instead of being present. His thumb moved again over her knuckles, slow and unconscious. Elena felt the words settle into her chest, heavy but familiar. I thought that being dependable was enough, he continued. That wanting more emotion, more intensity, was selfish. Her eyes burned slightly. I thought the same, she admitted. Noah looked at her then, really looked, as if her confession had unlocked something in him. That's why the circle matters, he said. It's not about changing who we are. It's about letting ourselves be fully seen inside what we already have. Elena glanced down at the ring. The circle had begun as a symbol of honesty, but now it felt like something else too. A boundary crossed. A threshold. When I said yes, she said slowly, I didn't realize I was agreeing to look at parts of myself I've ignored. Noah leaned back slightly, giving her space without breaking the connection of their hands. What did you find? She swallowed. Loneliness, she said honestly. Not because you weren't here, but because I stopped asking to be met. The admission left her exposed, breathless. Noah's eyes darkened with emotion. He lifted their joined hands and pressed a gentle kiss to the back of her fingers, not possessive, not demanding. Just present. The gesture landed harder than any dramatic declaration ever could. I'm here, he said quietly. I want to meet you again. Fully. Even if it means unlearning the version of us that felt easier. Elena felt tears gather, unbidden. She blinked them back, not wanting to break the moment. The air between them vibrated with something unspoken now, not fear, not doubt, but anticipation. The kind that came before a truth too important to rush. Noah hesitated again, his gaze flicking briefly to the circle. This last part, he said, is the hardest. Her chest tightened. Then take your time. He shook his head slightly. If I wait too long, I might retreat. That honesty made her heart ache. I need you to know, Noah said, his voice low, steady but strained, that my wish wasn't just about honesty. It was about choosing each other again. Not out of habit, but out of awareness. Elena felt the words shift something deep inside her. Choosing again. Not automatically, but consciously. And what if choosing again means seeing things differently? She asked. What if it changes how we want each other? A pause. That's the risk, Noah said. But it's also the point. They sat with that truth, letting it stretch between them. The city outside seemed impossibly far away now. Time slowed, thickened, as if it had decided to wait with them. Elena leaned forward, resting her forehead lightly against his. The contact was feather soft, but it sent a tremor through them both. Their breaths mingled, warm and uneven. I'm scared, she confessed. But I don't want to go back to being half present. Noah closed his eyes, pressing his forehead more firmly against hers. Neither do I. The circle caught the light again, glinting faintly, quiet, patient. In that moment, Elena understood something with startling clarity. Agreeing to his wish had already changed her. She could feel it in the way her heart felt more awake, more vulnerable. In the way she no longer wanted safety without depth. She pulled back just enough to look at him. What haven't you said yet? She asked softly. Noah opened his eyes. The look there, raw, unguarded, made her breath hitch. He drew in a slow breath, steadying himself. The truth, he said, is that stepping into this circle makes me want you in a way I've been too careful to admit. Not differently, but more honestly. More awake. The confession settled between them like a quiet storm. Elena's pulse thundered. She realized then that this wasn't the end of the conversation. It was the beginning of a choice. And she didn't yet know what that choice would ask of her.